This is what happens to every SpongeBob character in the future, starting off with the arch nemesis of Bikini Bottom himself, Plankton. And when it comes to Plankton's future, there's only two questions. One, was he able to steal the Krabby Patty formula? And two, did he take over the world? Well, not exactly.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
You see, Plankton's future is first revealed to us in Season 14's PL 1413, with this episode starting off with the residents of Bikini Bottom placing all of their belongings in a time capsule, which will go 2,000 years into the future. However, right as the ceremony is about to conclude, Plankton propels himself into the time capsule and is finally ready to steal the Krabby Patty formula. Well, so he thinks, as just like all of his previous attempts to steal the secret formula, this one is also thwarted, with Mr. Krabs simply slamming the door in his face and sending Plankton 2,000 years into the future.
You fools! With this patty in my grasp, I can finally take over the world! Yeah, maybe later.
2,000 years.
And so, when Plankton touches down 2,000 years into the future, he notices that everything has changed, with the entire town of Bikini Bottom being in a chrome wrap, which, by the way, is a great callback to SB129. And on top of this, even his computer wife Karen now has a completely new and renovated look. However, unlike his wife, Plankton's fate in the future is far worse, as his entire life's goal of finding out the Krabby Patty secret formula has been made redundant, with every single person in the future already knowing what the secret formula is.
In the future, everyone knows the secret formula.
What?
And this isn't even as bad as it gets for Plankton in the future, as once Plankton is finally able to go back to the past, it's revealed that his wife Karen has been having an affair this entire time with a much more muscular and altogether more charming man called Plankton 2.0. And yeah, it's hard to say that Plankton didn't have this coming after all of his years of neglect and abuse towards his wife. However, a character with a much more nuanced future is Squidward, whose future we first see in the iconic Season 1 episode SB129, which honestly starts off in a very familiar way, with SpongeBob and Patrick bothering Squidward to go jellyfishing, and Squidward, not so politely, turning them down.
I wonder who that could be.
Ready to go?
No, I'm not ready to go.
However, what comes after this is indeed rather out of the ordinary, as Squidward is so desperate to escape the annoyance of SpongeBob and Patrick that he sprints to the Krusty Krab and immediately locks himself in the freezer. Although, as you may expect, this isn't exactly the best idea, as Squidward eventually gets stuck in the freezer and is transported 2,000 years into the future, which in turn gives us one of the most iconic lines in all of SpongeBob history. And so, being thoroughly terrified of the future and all of its quirks, Squidward goes into a full panic and demands to be taken back to the present, which luckily for him, he's able to do as there's a time machine down the hall and to the left. However, if you guys want to go back into the past, you won't need a time machine, thanks to today's sponsor, MyHeritage. You see, thanks to MyHeritage, I've been able to do an incredible amount of research into my family tree. And as you can see, I've managed to go back generations upon generations, truly being able to see where my ancestry lies. And through MyHeritage, I've been able to discover that if you go back far enough, that my family is actually linked to Norwegian royalty, which honestly, I was not expecting at all. And this isn't even the only fascinating thing that I found while searching through my family tree. As you see, if you go back 4 different generations, I also have family that is deeply rooted in Australia on my grandfather's side. And honestly, Norway and Australia is not what I was expecting at all. And on top of this, I also love the fast match and instant discovery sections within MyHeritage, which allow you to unlock new branches of your family tree in a matter of seconds. And so, if you want to begin your journey into unlocking your family tree, then MyHeritage is giving you a 14-day free trial to test them out. Discovering new parts of your family tree is incredibly rewarding. And so, a massive thank you to MyHeritage for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to SpongeBob. And so, after Squidward's run-in with the can opener, he's finally able to get into the time machine. However, he's so desperate to get away from this dystopian future that he ends up going all the way back into the caveman days, where, just as you may have imagined, SpongeBob and Patrick are waiting to annoy him.
It's just a little jellyfish.
Which truly just goes to show that SpongeBob and Patrick will make Squidward's life miserable in every existence. Although, by far the funniest part of this entire sequence is the fact that no matter how far back in time you go, Squidward's clarinet playing is still so offensively bad to the point that it can completely destroy a society. And speaking of destroying society, after he's able to successfully clamber back into the time machine, we get to see a much different future for Squidward, as he somehow manages to bend the very fabric of time and space, eventually finding himself in an existential pit of nothingness, where his only company is his innermost thoughts.
I may finally have found a place where I can be all alone.
And yeah, this goes just about as well as you'd expect, with this crippling level of loneliness disproving Squidward's theory that he needs to be alone in order to be happy, as now that SpongeBob and Patrick have been taken away from his life, he's also lost his entire sense of purpose, which is only reclaimed when he finally gets back to the present and just can't help but express his gratitude at being able to see SpongeBob and Patrick once more.
You don't know how happy I am to see you guys.
Does this mean you want to go jellyfishing?
No!
Ah, yes. I forgot, this is still Squidward we're talking about here. However, being a time traveler isn't even the best future that Squidward has, as in the episode PL 1413, after Plankton travels 2,000 years into the future, his wife Karen takes him on a journey around Bikini Bottom, with this journey starting at Squidward's old house, which has now, to the surprise of Plankton, been turned into a museum.
See? This is Squidward's old house.
Museum of Squidward?
And at this point, you may be wondering, what has Squidward ever done to have his legacy remembered over 2,000 years later? Well, it's a rather unlikely answer, as despite Squidward's clarinet playing being hated since the start of time, this all changes exactly one day after Squidward passes away, with Squidward going on to become one of the most culturally significant artists of all time.
Sadly, no one started listening to them until the day after he was gone.
Typical.
However, a member of Bikini Bottom that is alive to experience his wonderful futures is none other than SpongeBob SquarePants.
Hi, how are you?
And SpongeBob's first future is shown to us in SB129. As while Squidward is busy panicking about the future, SpongeBob has been preoccupied for the past 2,000 years making clones of himself.
Of course I'm right, Squidward. Just ask my clones, Spongetrons X, Y, and Z.
Are the
other letters of the alphabet involved here?
Sure, all 486 of them.
And not only this, but SpongeBob now literally has the ability to fly. However, believe it or not, SpongeBob actually has Squidward to thank for making him such an evolved being, as when Squidward goes back in time, he stumbles upon the Neanderthal version of SpongeBob, who, let's just say, wasn't exactly the brightest creature. And so, seeing that SpongeBob clearly needed some help, Squidward stepped in and taught him how to jellyfish, with this simple act ultimately leading to SpongeBob being the sponge that we know and love today, with this even coming up as a joke at the end of the episode.
Oh, who's the barnacle head who invented that game anyway?
You are, Squidward.
Although, this is far from the last time that we see SpongeBob's future, with the next example of this coming from the season 5 episode, Spongehenge, which starts off with an incredibly vicious storm tearing through the town of Bikini Bottom.
My leftovers!
No! Why, dear Neptune?
And after being abruptly awoken by these leftovers, SpongeBob then realizes that the wind actually causes his pores to create an incredibly alluring musical sound. However, this musical sound is so alluring that it attracts all of the jellyfish in Bikini Bottom, with these jellyfish not leaving SpongeBob alone, and even following him to his job at the Krusty Krab.
Oh no! They found me! No, guys, please! Would you mind coming back after business hours?
And so, once the jellyfish sting SpongeBob for not complying with their demands, SpongeBob then realizes that he needs to get as far away as he possibly can. And so, SpongeBob locks himself away in a cave, which, as you may expect, starts to drive him slowly insane.
Can I confess something? Because I know you'll understand. I have this problem. I seem to attract jellyfish. How do you handle a thing like that?
However, in a moment of pure genius, SpongeBob realizes that in order to get rid of the jellyfish once and for all, he must build a small army of stone SpongeBobs in order to create the same sound that he makes. So yeah, it looks like for this version of SpongeBob, everything works well in the future. Well, that is, apart from the fact that Bikini Bottom has now been entirely destroyed in the years that SpongeBob was in the cave. Although, it's not all doom and gloom for this future version of SpongeBob, as 3,000 years further into the future, civilization is still in awe of how these SpongeBob statues were even created in the first place, with SpongeBob truly leaving behind the ultimate legacy in this timeline. However, the final version of SpongeBob in the future is even more unexpected than anything that we have discussed, as in the episode PL1413, it's revealed to us that SpongeBob has finally achieved the seemingly impossible task of becoming cool, or so it seems, as it turns out that this is just a hologram of SpongeBob, with the real SpongeBob being something far more strange. In fact, let's play a little guessing game. Which one of the following do you think SpongeBob is in this timeline? Did you get it? Well, if you answered a block of ice with wheels, then you are absolutely correct. And considering the fact that SpongeBob trapped his laughter in the time capsule at the start of the episode, it seems as though in every lifetime, SpongeBob will be known forever. Well, at least his laugh. And so, from Bikini Bottom's brightest sponge, we now move on to his best friend, Patrick Star, who throughout the entire SpongeBob series has proven himself to be, shall we say, not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed.
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
However, who am I to judge a book by its cover? I mean, hey, perhaps Patrick is just a late bloomer, and that his future is full of academia and philosophy. And yeah, who am I kidding? That doesn't happen. As when we see Patrick 2,000 years into the future in SB129, he's still exactly the same. Well, that is, apart from the fact that Patrick now has 2 heads and can seemingly bend the fabric of space and time whenever he wants to.
Please, we've got to do something.
Jellyfishing!
Somebody say jellyfishing?
Hi, Patron.
And the craziest part about all of this is that this isn't even the only time that we see Patrick shapeshift in the future. As in the episode PL1413, we find Patrick in yet another form. However, this time, he's merged with his own house and become a chrome giant. Something which Plankton realizes a little bit too late.
If he were here right now, I'd suck him right in his slack jaw.
That's right, Patrick Star is now the P1000. With piercing red laser eyes, the ability to turn into his own bed, and unfortunately for Plankton, the P1000 is still as hungry as he always was.
I'm hungry. I need a chrome snack.
Even as a robot, he's an idiot.
This doesn't taste like chrome.
And speaking of hungry, it's time to move on to our next character, who is incredibly hungry for money. That's right, I am of course talking about Mr. Krabs.
The sweet smell of an all-day sucker.
And so, at this point, you're probably thinking, well, it's super obvious. Of course, because of his capitalistic greed, Mr. Krabs will end up living in a luxurious mansion.
Wrong.
Well, not exactly. You see, Mr. Krabs, of course, always intended on being rich forever. As in the episode PL1413, when the town is putting things into the time capsule, Mr. Krabs automatically sees this as a way to set up his financial future.
Customers of the future will pay top dollar for a vintage original Krabby Patty. Can I transfer this now, or do I have to wait?
However, little does Mr. Krabs know that this attempt at infinite riches will only come back to bite him. As 2,000 years into the future, every single resident of Bikini Bottom knows the secret formula. And not only this, but they can also produce a fresh Krabby Patty just by thinking about it. Which, of course, isn't exactly great for business. With this ultimately leading to the Krusty Krab, or should I say the Chromie Krab, being shut down forever.
I think there's something else you should see.
The Chromie Crab? Permanently closed due to rust?
And this isn't even the only time that Mr. Krabs' life of greed has ended in despair. As in the Spongehenge episode, after SpongeBob is finally able to lure all of the jellyfish away from his pores, he decides that this would be the perfect time to go back to work. However, much to his surprise, there's no work to go back to, as the Krusty Krab is now completely destroyed.
Krusty Krab, here I come! Oh! How long was I gone? No!
And honestly, it's hard to say that Mr. Krabs doesn't deserve this fate, given the fact that he spent practically his entire life in the pursuit of making more money, even if that came at the cost of being a good person, or hey, even just being a good boss. However, someone whose future is far greater is Sandy Cheeks. In fact, Sandy has much more of a role in controlling the future than anyone else in Bikini Bottom, as it's Sandy's idea in the first place to have the time box in PL1413.
Thank you, Miss Mayor. I designed this metallic vessel to perfectly preserve anything inside for a very specific amount of time.
And not only is Sandy able to live for these 2,000 years, but she's also incredibly helpful in the future, as when Plankton needs to go back in time, he immediately goes to Sandy's house, with Plankton being more than a little shocked at what Sandy looks like now.
Hey! Sandy Cheeks at your service, Mr. Plankton.
What the?
That's right, instead of aging forwards like, well, the rest of civilization, Sandy has instead gone back to being her Camp Coral childhood self. However, just because she's a child, this doesn't stop her from being a space-time genius, even going as far as preempting Plankton's arrival and having a time machine ready to send him back to the present. Although, given the fact that Plankton now knows the secret formula, Sandy has to use her special memory erasing device on Plankton first.
But I will need you to forget that secret formula. Hold still while I activate my memory erasing device.
Your what?
And boy, that's gotta hurt. However, what hurts Plankton even more than this is the fact that his wife Karen becomes far more famous and successful than he ever could dream of becoming. As when Plankton is still 2,000 years into the future, Karen reveals to him that ever since he's been gone, she's been able to achieve incredible things without him, becoming an incredibly well-known artist who has people literally spawning in order to buy her coveted chrome canvases.
I'm quite successful, in fact.
Oh, honey! This would match the couch in the living room.
We'll take it.
And so, looking at who has the best and worst futures in SpongeBob, it's hard not to put Plankton at the very bottom of the list, as not only does his wife become far more successful than him, but she also leaves him for a far more handsome version of himself. And not only this, but Plankton also has his only true motivation of stealing the Krabby Patty secret formula completely stripped away from him. And only slightly higher on the list, we have Mr. Krabs, who has his business and livelihood completely destroyed not once, but twice, ultimately leaving behind only his greed to be remembered by. And after this, we have Squidward, whose future is honestly very mixed, managing to bend the very fabric of space and time, and go down as one of the most influential artists of all time. Although, unfortunately for him, this is after he passes away. And honestly, it's incredibly hard to decide who has the best future in SpongeBob. And so, I'll put it to you guys in the comments. Do you think that SpongeBob, Karen, Patrick, or Sandy has the best future? Let me know in the comments below, and also don't forget to get your 14-day free trial to MyHeritage, and start unlocking your family tree with the link in the description below.